a balancing act. And the more things you add, the more challenging it can become. If you're already a parent or a guardian, you know how busy child rearing is. But then when you decide to homeschool, you're layering on a whole new set of responsibilities. Can you juggle work with this too? Whether you're working full-time, part-time, or just volunteering a few hours a week, can it be done? Well, we are here today to tell you, yes, it can be, and you can succeed. I am Sunny, Sunlight's community manager and a Sunlight mom of two. And joining me are Tender and Jen. Let's start with some introductions. Tender, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Sunny. I am a homeschooling mom, and I've been homeschooling for, I believe, this is my 14th year homeschooling. So I have, my oldest is a freshman in college, and then I have 2 high schoolers and 1 in middle school. And about that whole time we've been homeschooling, I've also been working. So before kids, I was a computer programmer and project manager. And so when I transitioned to homeschooling, and when my kids were really young, that enabled me to kind of work from home and do project-based work. And a lot of times when they were small, I would do work in the evenings when I put them to bed, or I would do it during nap time in the afternoon. I could squeeze some work in. Now that they are older, and I usually, with what I'm working on, I will do mornings work best for us squeezing in our school, and I get a lot done in the morning, and then I will work some in the afternoon. So I've been able to kind of do part-time for many, many years, and do project-based consulting. And so that's kind of what I've done off and on all these years.
Well, thank you so much. Jen, you want to tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. I am a homeschool mom of 4. I have 2 graduated and 1 in high school, and 1 in middle school right now. This is my 21st year of homeschooling, all using Sunlight. For many years, I was a stay-at-home mom, and then I found myself single and needing to work. And the most stable educational thing I could do for my kids was continue to homeschool. And my older ones were on board with that. And so we made it work. I am now remarried and still homeschooling. And so we've kind of had it a lot of different ways and faced a lot of different challenges. Even when I have had to work full time, I have been doing it on a part-time basis. So some working from home and some working a few hours at a time out of the house. And so, yeah, it's not the standard homeschooling story, but, between just the desire and the cooperation from my kids, we have always made it work.
Thank you. And this is a topic I'm extremely passionate about because I've also always worked while homeschooling. When I started, I was working kind of unconventional hours. So it gave me the idea that, oh, I can homeschool. But I went back to traditional working hours about 5 years ago and knew at that point I did not want to give up homeschooling. So it was something that, like you said, Jen, I made it work and we figured it out. And I think up until 2020, a lot of people didn't realize you could do both. Until we saw, the huge influx of remote workers and schools being closed and things like that, people didn't even consider that an option, I don't think, if they were working most of the time. But now people have begun to realize that's possible. They don't quite know how to make it work in their home. So let's help them figure it out, whether you are working and considering homeschooling, or you're homeschooling and considering going back to work and trying to figure this out. We would love to help you all. So I think it's really important when you choose to homeschool to have a reason for why you want to homeschool anyway. But why would you consider homeschooling and working at the same time?
Well, I think we had touched on it earlier before recording that it's, in my value system and outlook on life, it's the best education possible I can give my child. And plus, to me, it still allows, even though I'm working from home, I still can make the most of my time with my kids. I love being with my kids. And so even more, we have a lot high academic aspirations, but more than that, I want that they have quality time with me and memories that are going to be made that are going to far outweigh the academic benefits in their growing up years, that they'll look back and say, ooh, we spent so much fun time together. We learned together. We made so many connections with the good books that we've read, and that just gives them real good childhood memories that they get to look back on.
I agree with every single thing Tender said. I would add to that, if the question is, why would we consider working and homeschooling? Sometimes you need the money. Like,
Right.
Even though I choose to, for whatever reason, academic, medical, emotional, military, whatever, homeschool my children, I may also need to put bread on the table. And that's a valid reason. I mean, it's not like a romantic reason that people write about in magazines, but there it is. Sometimes there is no choice other than for the homeschooling person to also be making money. And while I have loved homeschooling as a career, didn't make me much money. So that, I mean, that is really what it came down to for me. Also, even for the stay-at-home mom, it is really, really smart for a lot of people to choose to keep their foot in whatever their career is going to be. Tender and I have been homeschooling together for a long time, even though we're very far apart. And I know that when she graduates that last kid and is like, I am back in the workforce, she is going to have a very easy time of it, because she has been working this entire time. And for people who even got a degree in their 20s, stopped and had all their babies, homeschooled them for a million years, you look at going back and it is overwhelming and intimidating if you have not kept a foot in the door. So that might be another reason.
Yeah, that's such a true point. And I agree with what you guys said as well. Also, for me personally, I found I was very much the high achieving student. And when I thought about giving up work to be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool, I did not love that idea. I wanted to homeschool, but I did not see myself being a stay-at-home mom. I needed a place where I could achieve and grow personally. And for me, work has kind of filled that bucket, that need to do things that are not tied to my husband, not tied to my kids, kind of my own place in life to succeed. So I think it does very much depend on your personality and, what fills your bucket that way. And so for me, keeping my foot in the workforce was important, but more for my own mental well-being of knowing that I could achieve things and accomplish things. And, not that homeschooling my children has not been a big achievement or accomplishment as well, but it just gives me that separate outlet in that place, where I'm surrounded by adults and getting to do my own thing. But like you ladies said, I also believe that educating your children at home is probably the best education option for most children. Not always all parents, but most children, I think, can benefit from being homeschooled. And I know in our house, we have seen so many benefits from it. And so that was something I didn't want to let go of. So we had to figure out how to make it work and do both in our house. So let's talk about the scheduling. Obviously, if you are working, that's a big time commitment. If you're homeschooling, that's a big time commitment. So how do you fit everything in?
Well, the great thing about homeschooling is that it's not on a schedule. Like, if you have to work, your employer may well tell you what time you will be there and what time you will leave. But in my homeschooling world, I can start at 7:00 in the afternoon, or in the evening. You do not need to school from 8 to 3 every day. You just don't. The number of nights I am still doing schoolwork or reading, or right now it's government homework and statistics with my high schooler at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I mean, but I have night owls. And so 11 o'clock at night can be a very productive moment because the world is quiet, the house is quiet, and like that kid feels like she can have my full attention. And so it works. We've had seasons where I worked first thing in the morning. And so I would come home at 11 o'clock in the morning, having done all of my paid work, and then we would hit the ground running homeschooling. And then other days, 11 o'clock at night, we're still going.
Yeah, I agree that it's so nice that homeschooling is flexible, that you can make it work. I mean, even if you have to do some catch up or do something on a weekend that would not, be a normal school day. You can fit that to your schedule. And, for me, I've kind of worked in the afternoons or the evenings. So I would flip and I would just make sure we were up and at 'em in the morning first thing, and that we would read together and get our schoolwork done, and they would kind of get lined out and then be able to work independent of me as the afternoon rolled in and finish up their work. So, you can just really tailor, make that work to your benefit on whatever your schedule might look at. Like Jen was saying, if she works in the morning and they school in the afternoon, or me, vice versa, if we school in the mornings and then I work in the afternoons, you can really set it to your schedule. And I think the really thing is it does require being a little more organized, having some thought on how to structure my day. Now, it doesn't mean I am not a structured person that says at 8 o'clock in the morning, we are always going to do our history, Bible, literature first thing. We might flip it up sometimes and say, oh, let's do math first or something else. But I will at least have a general idea of these are our schooling hours. And, and I have an idea of, if I need to prep or know what's going to happen in the afternoon to keep my kids working independently now. As older, or what we're going to do for dinner. So I do think that it requires a little bit more of pre-thought of this is what we're going to do to make this schedule work and everything smooth.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sunny.
I was going to say also kind of setting boundaries too, whether it be with your employer. I know when the whole world went remote, I noticed I was getting pinged later and later at night because more people were also working at home. So it was not like the days before where I was the only one at home and people would leave their office and leave their work there. And, I would be on to school with my kids. Like you, Jen, we're night owls. And so we do school at the end of the day and often right up until bedtime. And so I had to start setting boundaries with my employer of you cannot call me at night. Like, this is my time. I've worked for you all day. Leave me alone. Or with your kids too. I mean, if you have young kids, it might be harder to do this especially if you are working at home and you're with them. I've been remote for the last 5-ish years and my kids were younger when I started that. So we really had to work on when the door is shut, don't come in. If you hear me talking to someone, don't come in, and I will be with you in just a moment. And, doing kind of those check-ins with the kids throughout the day of, okay, do you need help with your math or what are you working on that you need help with right now? And
I have found it way easier to train my children to that than my cat. I saw Remus's tail earlier. It's because he's like, oh, we're doing a video. I'll come. But like, if I shut the door, then they bang on the door, no matter what side of the door they're on. So I have to leave the door cracked, just cat width. And so they feel free to come in and like wag their little tails. And whatever. It's the Zoom world now. Sometimes kitty tails is what you get. I was going to say before that to build on what Tender said, I have always said to my kids, a rainy Saturday in February is worth a sunny day in June. Mm-hmm. If we are home and we are free and we have the time to there's nothing planned or the weather wrecked our, Saturday, whatever, let's do some school because that's one more day that's done. And we weren't we need to use the time we have. And I think that's really my biggest piece of advice is whatever the time you have is. If you are 5 a.m. people, if you are 10 p.m. people, if you are Saturday people, whatever, if you use the time you have, you can make it work. If you have this idea that school happens Monday to Friday, 8 to 3, it's going to be really tough to get your head around how to get it all done.
Yes. And we do have lots of hours in the day. Sometimes it just means, structuring on, okay, I'm not going to binge Netflix in the evening. I'm going to turn that kind of stuff off. And instead, I'm going to snuggle on the couch and we're going to read some really good books together. So, there is some give and take, but we still have lots of things that it's not really going to matter if I watched this episode or did this, that I can lay that aside for now, and we're going to focus and do something a little bit different with that time. So I think you do have lots of time. You just kind of have to think about how am I using my time And you can give up things that aren't really going to matter. How much time were you on social media? We as a society these days, we spend lots of time on things that we can cut that out or at least decrease dramatically. And you can have a lot of time to devote to something else.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think also remembering that you don't have to do your entire school day all at once. I think sometimes people might look at their IG and be like, okay, I have to do all these things, fit it in where you can, Tender, like you said, in place of Netflix time, or, if you are an early person and want to get started at 5 a.m. and do, a few things. And we'll talk a little bit more too about helping your kids be independent as well with what they can do. But yeah, I think squeezing it in where you can. Saturday afternoon is kind of our catch-up day on, did we not get to the science experiment, or, some of the longer things, because then we are home and none of us are working, and then we have more time to do those things. And I think it's kind of a stereotype, but when people think of homeschool teachers, they often think of the mom sitting there with her children gathered around all day. But can other people make good homeschool teachers? Can the dad be the teacher? Can a grandparent be the teacher? Does it just have to be the mom home educating?
I think dads make amazing homeschool teachers. I know several of them who are full-time homeschooling, and they do a fantastic job. Also, in my experience, full disclosure, I am not the fun mom. I am the efficient mom. If you want the event to run in an organized fashion, I'm your girl. If you want it to be sparkly and decorated and have every kid think it was the funnest night of their life, I am not your girl. So I am not a fun mom. I'm not. My experience of homeschool dads is that they're fun dads. They're the ones who do all the awesome voices in the book, and they're willing to dissect the fish just because there was a fish today. And they're, they're so willing to go outside of my box that I highly recommend letting, even if you're not trying to schedule and work and do a crazy life, totally let the dad in. They bring so much to the table.
Yes, I so enjoyed using and would ask, my husband, Rob, I was like, would you mind when they were younger if I saved the read aloud, and would you do after dinner? And that let me either have some time to go work, or I could catch up on dishes or laundry or do something. And then he got quality time with the kids. And like Jen said, he brings along the fun voices and it's fun to be with dad. And you're also sharing in those building of memories and connections with dad reading out loud to you, and not just mom being always the one reading a good book to everybody. And so we did a lot of that when they were younger. And then as my work has changed and they are older, there have been times that I'm gone a couple of days. And so my husband has taken off work. He has more vacation built up. And so he'll take off and he'll cover for me, and I can leave. That's what I've always loved about Sunlight, and what I've used Sunlight, all of our homeschooling as well, is that I can have a schedule, and my husband has stepped in, taken a day off of work if I was going to be gone for work, and he would cover and be able to. School continued seamlessly for my children, even though the teacher was, the main teacher was not present. Dad stepped in and he could do it. And he felt he was fine and capable and confident, because he had, here's the book, here is the pages that you read, and you just go down, and it's very easy to follow. And even my mom has stepped in for me. If Rob couldn't step in and take a day off at work, then my mom would say, oh, I can watch the kids today while you work. And so she would come over. And again, she was able to continue with the school because I had a schedule and it's all laid out, and she can just do it.
That's so true. Yeah. And I know we had a similar experience in our house where, when I was pregnant with my son and not feeling well, that's kind of when my husband first started stepping in and reading some books to our daughter. She was in, I think, preschool, kindergarten, something like that at the time. And so he was like, yeah, I can read some of these books. Well, as time has gone on, he's taken on bigger and bigger things. And I credit him with teaching our youngest how to read. I struggled with understanding how my son was looking at the letters and how he was reading them, because it was not the same way I learned. And my husband sat down with him and he said, oh, I know why he's seeing it this way or why he can't remember the sounds. And so he really took a concerted effort on teaching our son how to read. And I mean, without that, I don't know if he'd be reading now. But ever since then, he started working remotely at the beginning of 2020 when everybody went remote. And so he really got to see what we were doing every day. And, you know, my work volume went way up at that time. I was in healthcare at the time. And so I was very busy. And so he started stepping in and what do you need? What do you need help with? What can I do? And now we take kind of a tag team approach where, you know, one of us takes one child and the other one takes the other, or, you know, I'll do the language arts and read aloud because that's what I like. And then he'll do science experiments and grade math and the things he likes. So yeah, I think it's great that it's flexible and you can kind of work out in your own home, you know, what's going to work. Tender, I love that you mentioned your mom reading some as well. I mean, what's better than a grandmother reading to her grandchildren? You know, they can learn in all different ways when they're hearing from other people as well. So how can Sunlight's curriculum make it easier to manage working and homeschooling? I know everything already being planned is a big plus for me, but how have you guys found that Sunlight's curriculum makes it easier to do all of these different things?
We focus a lot on the instructor's guide, having that grid for the week, that chart of this is what your week will look like. Here is what to do every day in every subject. For me, trying to work and homeschool and have multiple kids on different levels and all that extra crazy, the glory part of the IG for me is that I can look all the way ahead. So if I have a kid who is like, sorry, I was bored while you were at work, I read that whole book. Okay, great. Well, then let's talk about it and let's move on to the next book. And so it allows the flexibility because you can not only see what we're doing right now, but you can see what's coming. And not all of those, not all the subjects are skill subjects the way that math is. For math, I mean, you really have to do this page and then we'll do the next page. You can't really jump ahead. We really need to make sure you master this before we try to master that. But like in reading, I have kids who they see that big stack of this year's books and it's like candy, you know?
Yes.
Can I do the next thing? Can I do the next thing? And so it really helped us keep on track to look at the big picture of the IG and see that book list and, you know, and a lot of times it's like, well, if we finish this real early, then we can focus on whatever I've been slacking on because I've been busy, which is usually science experiments. And so like we tend to do that in the spring because that's when kind of everything else is lightening up because we know what we can work ahead in. Ooh.
Yeah, and also what I like about it is kind of like you said, the grid system of having everything in boxes. What our approach has always been is we check things off when they're done, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the whole day. Or, you know, if I've said I'm going to do history this week, I might do the whole week's worth of history in 2 days, and then we'll skip, you know, something else later on. And because it's all pre-planned and there's notes in there, I don't have to do any of that planning. I did not want to, you know, make my own curriculum or find anything. I wanted to go with what I knew would work and was already planned out. I also love now that my daughter's in middle school, she does a lot of the books on her own. So having those discussion questions, you know, on the back of each page to tell me like, what is this book about? So that I don't actually have to read every single book ahead is super helpful too. And we've already kind of touched on how children can work independently when you work, but how do you start fostering that independence in your kids, but then also make sure that they're still doing what they're supposed to do and they're not just off playing and not doing their schoolwork when you think they are?
Well, I think that part of, you know, what homeschooling is now showing, like for college students, is that those that were homeschooled, they do really well in college. And it's because, you know, really homeschooling fostered that independent learning and learning how to be organized. And it's just something that is kind of built into, hopefully, how in our culture of what we're doing at home, so that, I have for a long time given all my kids like a list of everything we do today, but I let them have some control over what they have enjoyed doing. Like, maybe they want to do math first, or if reading's their favorite subject, I can, it's just, this is all the things, or even, practice your music instrument, practice your piano, but it has all of the different things that we want to do every day. And, I put it in a page protector or something, they can check it off and mark it off with a dry erase marker and come back the next day and use it. Or if they just need the visual of, here's the checklist of this is what we're doing every day. Now, when they're little, sometimes I would be just showing them, they say, here's what we're doing today. And, I might let them choose, oh, you want to do language arts? Okay, do language arts here at the dining room table. And I'm folding towels, and I'm going to give them the directions of, oh, we're looking at this, we're looking at adverbs, and I'll read the instructions to them. And then while they're reading through the sentences and circling adverbs, they're working independently, but I'm really kind of close. I'm sitting here folding towels. But as they get older, I don't have to be so close or tethered or remind them, that instead of for every subject, ask them, okay, now what are we going to work on next? Get that out, that I can just say, here's what you've done. And then, now as they're in middle school and high school, I can say, hey, did you get these things done? Or do you have any questions? Let's review. Let me talk to you about what you read today. And, I can just touch in and just know, or let me grade your work now. And I can look at it and review it. And then, oh, they've got it. Or, oh, wait, we need to review a little something, that I can just touch in with them. But they know they had their list and they knew what they were supposed to do. And so it kind of goes from when they're little, you're teaching them, but you're just doing one thing at a time, and you're pretty close as you're monitoring them. And then as they get older, it fosters that independence that when they're in high school, I mean, I have some in high school that I had to still, really check. At the end of the week, we need to review everything. I need to look at your paper. I need to know that everything is finished, because otherwise, I would forget. I just had some kids that they couldn't keep it all in their head, and they would forget what they were supposed to do. But I have some that are just super organized and they have it all done. And I really don't have to do too much other than just, grade math and, review their papers.
Yep. I agree. And I have both kinds of kids too. I had some that would forget. So a lot of times, whatever their activity was, like if they were playing basketball or whatever, that was contingent upon the work. Like before basketball, I need to see all your work. It needs to all be done, or I'm not driving there. And right. Miraculously, that that got quicker results than just kind of random checking or even daily checking. Because if they knew it was tied to something they really wanted, they got real responsible real fast. Right. I totally agree that this is really a long-term goal of mom's leash being lengthened. Because when I started what you call fostering independence, it was like, I'm going to go potty. When I come back, I want you to still be in this chair.
Right.
That's the goal. That's the entire goal. And like 6 months later, it was like, when I come back, I want the next 2 math problems to be done. And, then they went on to college and adulting, and they're wildly successful. But it started with I'm going to leave the room for 45 seconds. And if nothing is on fire when I come back, everybody wins.
That's right.
Right? That's really, really where it starts. And it's a long road. So if you have a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old and you feel like, why am I not there yet? Because you're not there yet. That's totally normal. Just so you know, that's completely normal. They will be adults eventually, probably not today.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think knowing what your kids are capable of, every kid has a different personality, and some are, great from an early age. I know my daughter read early and then, was doing a lot of work on her own when she was probably 3rd or 4th grade. My son is in 2nd grade now and still has to sit right next to me to stay on task. Otherwise he'll be, you can see his chair back here or right here next to me so that he can actually sit here and do his math while I'm working, because otherwise he'll just sit there, staring off and not doing what he's supposed to do. So yeah, starting small and figuring out what your kids are capable of. I love what you said, Jen, about, I'm going to go to the bathroom. You have 2 math problems. That's all you have to do, but get it done before I come back. And once you see that your kids can do that, you can move on to, the whole math lesson or handwriting and, and I would say, yeah, definitely start with you kind of doing all the reading and making sure the kids are understanding it before you try to hand that off. But then, yeah, once they get a little bit older, you can start turning over some of the reading to them. My daughter has been taking her readers to bed with her for years, and she reads that before she goes to sleep and then answers questions the next day.
Yep.
So I know every homeschool parent might be apprehensive about falling behind too, especially like Sunlight has a ton of books, a ton of materials in that IG and things that you cover. But this is especially an issue, I think, if your schedule is really tight when you are trying to work and homeschool at the same time. So how do you stay on track with finishing your year when you want to, or doing what you want to each week and not just falling further and further behind?
Well, I think, Jen said like that 36-week schedule is awesome. And, Sunlight gives you the ability to do 4-day weeks or 5 days where there's just a few less readers. And in the history Bible literature, if you choose like a 4-day versus a 5-day. Now that is all up until you reach the brink of high school. Then everything is 5 days because you just have to get it. It's hard to condense high school. Okay. So you can enjoy those 4-day in the younger years. And so we did a lot of 4-day schedules, but even the 5-day high school schedules, we're still sometimes kind of condensing, like you say, on, we know that we're going to have this one day where we're just out a lot of the day, or we're doing co-op or whatever that might look like. And so we buckle down and get the other things done the rest of the days of the week, and we fit and squeeze that into our schedule. But being able to look ahead and know, and again, as we touched on at the beginning, it doesn't have to look like a regular school year. So we have all of the material and what we need to fit in. But if it takes, into the summer, that is quite all right. And we never finish like all 5 subjects all at the same time. Like Jen said, you have that where you end up in the spring that certain things like we've read or we're ahead in certain things. Or is it math? Because we just do math every day regardless. And so math ends up, you finish that early, and then you just have these other things so that you can double up and finish if you're doing like a traditional school year. But you can also put those 36 weeks and you just kind of spread it out throughout a whole year. That's quite all right to do. So there's just all sorts of ways to be able to do what you need to have done and get it done either in a traditional school year or to school all year.
And because of our family schedule, schooling in the summer does not work at all. We simply cannot. And so my option is sometimes to let it go. Sometimes we do not read every single book, and we do not do every single assignment. And I live with that. And I know that a lot of people are like horrified, and that's okay. But I think the nature of education is that there's no point at which you're ever going to say, we have now done everything. We have learned all the things and we are finished. And so if we don't get it all done, we've got most of it done. And getting most of it done in this homeschool format, which I feel like has always been the optimal way for my family, is even getting most of it done is way better than making any other choice. And so sometimes we just are not perfect. And that is, I have just decided that is okay, even though there's part of my brain that wigs out a little. I've just decided that if we can't work in the summer and we do not get every single thing done, so be it.
Yeah, Jen, excellent point. sunlight gives us more, even more than we need. And so it is okay. There are some, and Jen and I are probably on that line, that we want to check every box. We want to read every question, all the notes. But it is okay if you don't get to all of it. And your child is still going to be well educated, even though they didn't, they read 23 of the 26 books on that year. So you have to realize that they are still going to be okay. And they might have some holes by the time they reach college. You might not have covered every subject, but what you did give them was you gave them all the tools to fill in any little holes or gaps they might have had, because we've shown them, oh, where do you go find information? Books. Let's read about what we don't know, and let's research. We've done that because we've fostered that all throughout their homeschooling years. Yeah. So even if you miss something, it's going to be okay, because you left them with all the tools they need to be able to say, oh, I don't understand this enough. Let me do some more reading on it.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I love to say, once you can read, you can learn anything, because you just have to find out, where to learn it. And I know it is hard to let go of things, but I have found the longer I homeschool and the more I see what my kids are learning, it does get easier, because then you realize, oh my gosh, they are learning and they're ahead of, their peers in many ways. So if I skip, this one little thing, it's not going to be the end all be all, and ruin the rest of their life or anything. Also, when you homeschool, I mean, lots of people have opinions about it anyway, and they often feel that it's okay to share them with you. I mean, I found when I started homeschooling, I was getting feedback from everyone I ever met about, my decision to homeschool. But when you choose to work on top of it too, that's a whole added layer. So how do you keep the naysayers from getting to you and from feeling that pressure of everyone else's expectations?
I got some good advice early from an experienced homeschool mom, and I learned to say, that's really interesting.
Very good advice.
Like, I don't let those naysayers have no power over me. If it is not somebody I would ask for advice, it is probably not somebody from whom I'm willing to ingest criticism. People are going to say all kinds of stuff online, in person. I have occasionally said, did you mean to say that out loud? And, they raise their kids the way they choose to, and I respect that. And I just don't let it in.
Yes. I think Jen makes an excellent point. And it's awesome to just, to be able to just smile and nod and let them, and just you can pray about, and talk with your spouse, and, and you can have, are we doing the best for our family? And that's up between you talking with your husband and with, and praying about it. But I am so glad that we live in a country where there is so much freedom here, and it can look different, and it's okay. And it can be different from other people's experience. And, and what works for us would not work for someone else. And we get to figure that out and kind of flush it out in our home. And so it can look different, and it really is okay.
Yeah. And I love that you both made the distinction that, I'm choosing to homeschool my children and work, but that doesn't mean I'm telling you have to do that, right. And by the same token, don't tell us what we should do, because this is what's best for our family. So I think, we have been fortunate in our home. I was homeschooled 1 year and my sister was for a few years. So my family was right on board with us. But I know my husband's family, we kind of had to work through that with them of, this is our home. This is what we're doing with our children. We're not telling you what to do with our nieces and nephews or your grandchildren, the other kids, but this is what we're doing. So you may have to do some of that if it's coming from your own family, but like you said, Jen, if it's online, just ignore it or, that's your opinion. This is what I'm going to do. So And Jen, you mentioned that your kids have activities in the summer that keep you from being able to do school. So this one I think is a great question about like extracurricular activities. You know, obviously kids in school get to do extracurriculars, or if you're homeschooling and, you know, you have the time to do extracurriculars, that might be something your kids want to do, or Tender, you mentioned a co-op. How do you get those activities in when your time is already on a short supply because you're working also?
I have had to prioritize. I have two children for whom their sports were as necessary to their happiness as their math. Like, no kidding. Karate and soccer are cheaper than therapy and work better. And so I had to prioritize, and I arranged my schedule around making things happen. Also, though, I mean, carpooling is your friend. I quit club soccer 18 months before my oldest son did. I went to his coach and I said, I just don't have the time to drive to the next state, to be gone 2 days every weekend. I have other kids, I have other commitments. And he said, don't pull him. I'll drive him wherever we need to go. Okay. And so I became the local carpool mom. Like, if your kid needed a ride home from practice on Thursday, I would totally drive anywhere in town. But I never, ever went to a game after that was out of town. It takes a village. There were also things, I'm not going to lie, I had to say no to. Every year, my daughter swims for her public high school team, and she swims summers, and every one of her coaches comes to me and says she needs to be doing club swimming. And she's not, because it's a bazillion dollars. And even if I had the bazillion dollars, it's all different times, all over town, 8 days a week, literally like 7 days, and an extra workout on one day. And I can't. And I say no. And so some things work and some things don't. And again, that just has to be okay.
Right. And I think, you know, like Jen said it, you got to prioritize. What are your big rocks? You know, when you fill up that jug of your week, what is that going to look like? You know, school and work, or some of those big rocks, you know, and like she said, you know, that we see that soccer or those outside things. I have some basketball players that those are big because they benefit the student and mom, you know, with being able to have all this energy to release. And so that those are very valuable. So those end up being kind of large, and we put them in. And then, you know, what are the things that fall by the wayside? Well, you know, I did have a family member that had remarked one time that I would have a cleaner house. And that, you know, if we didn't school at home, and that's very true. I mean, if we weren't living here and doing life in our house, it would stay cleaner if we were all left the house for 8 hours, you know, every day. But, you know, this is just in our life and what in my priority, you are going to probably visit my house and you will see dust. I mean, or you will see a mess. And it's just because we live here. And so that is a lower prioritized, you know, I do not have a spotless house. So that is a little rock. And sometimes it doesn't make it for the week, you know, or fit in. So, you know, you just have to figure out what are the things that you get your big rocks first, and then we'll see what little things fall in. And some of them just won't make the cut, you know, because it's just in this season, or we say no to certain activities. Like Jen says, you know, what are the most important for our kids? And we say, okay, these are the activities, but you're not going to be involved in, you know, 4 sports, or, you know, you get to have your one that you're involved in. So each family is different, and you make that part. What are your priorities? And then there are going to be things that won't make the cut. You know, no, you can't do theater and do a sport, you know, one or the other.
Amen.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, picking your priorities. And like you said, start with the big things, figure out how they can be fit in, and then everything else kind of fit in around it. And I love that you mentioned the clean house too, because I always, when my house is messy, I'm like, well, this is a phase in my life. One day my kids will be grown and gone, and they won't be here making messes all day. And then I will have the clean house that I love, you know. But at this time, you know, it's more important that I have that relationship with my kids, and they feel like they can spread out and do their school all over the dining room table. Our table is only cleaned up if people are coming over to eat. Otherwise, it's covered in stuff all the time. And just the way it is. So, I mean, it can always be overwhelming or exhausting homeschooling anyway, but especially when you're working, you're allocating so much of yourself to other people, your job, your kids, your spouse, all of that. So how do you get time to yourself, or how do you recharge to make sure that, you know, you are able to keep handling that pace?
You make a lot of assumptions.
Yeah. So maybe not by yourself, because it is hard to find time to yourself. But how do you keep going, you know, without burning the candle at both ends to the point that you can't keep doing this?
I think that I want to say something like grand and meaningful about actually how to balance it. And I got nothing. I will say, it's a priority for me. Homeschooling is a priority. I am almost done, and I still see the value in it, and I still see the beauty in it, and it is still important to me, and therefore I still make it work. And I sacrifice the clean house, and I sacrifice the career money, and I sacrifice the time. And I know, but you know what, in all the phases of my life, with all my, especially with my kids who are already out of the house, I have never regretted it for 1 second. I have never looked back and thought, should have worked more, should have put the kids in daycare, should have put the kids in school. Never. For a lot of reasons that are, you know, particular to me, and you would have different reasons that are particular to you. But at this point, I can see that I've never regretted it. And so to just keep going is worth it. But I don't know if you guys are having the same experience, but like working and homeschooling and the multiple kids and the husband working at home and all the pandemic fatigue, like I'm burning the candle at both ends right now.
Yeah. And I guess it just, you have to look, and as you said, Sunny, that really that work outlet is a source of kind of self-care, because it gives you that outside thing that, you know, we might be doing it because yes, we need to, like Jen said, but there is part of it too, is that we want to, because we enjoy, hopefully it is, if you're doing it, I sure hope it's something you enjoy. And because if it's not, you know, you need to be praying about, okay, Lord, if I need to work, can I do something that I enjoy? Because that would be a drag to not. And like Jen said, I still like it. Homeschooling is just so important to me that, you know, it's worth the sacrifices. And I would not want to be anywhere else or working outside the home or full time where I didn't get to spend time with them. And, you know, in the whole scheme of things, when you step back, and this is a short period of time, your kid's growing up. And if you're around and able to be involved, and time is our most valuable asset we have to give to our kids. So Jen's right that when you look back on this really, really busy season and that you're burning the candle at both ends, I don't think you're going to regret. I don't think I'm going to regret it. And Jen said, and she's not going to regret it, that we said, oh, we stayed home and we were with our kids. That's not going to be one of the things that you regret. So I think it's so worth it. And I mean, and sometimes it's just, do you need to, in yourself, like foster, you know, wake up and say, what am I thankful for? And just you need to just remind yourself and do that. You know, the coaching or the thinking positively, you know, yes, thank you, Lord, that I get to be at home. And thank you that my husband doesn't mind me staying at home and doing this. And thank you that I have a skill set that I can, you know, earn some money. And so sometimes that's the care that we need to take, is some of that talk that goes on in our head of just like, why are we doing this? And it's that coaching, you know, that we're doing to our kids a lot of times, but sometimes mom might need it too, of yes, I'm doing this so that we can have these meaningful conversations when they want to come in at 11 o'clock at night and tell me about something, you know, and you'd rather go to bed, but realized that, oh, this is what I'm doing this for, is I have a teenage son or daughter that wants to come in and talk to me about some important relationship issues. So that's what I'm going for. And so that's, I don't know, that's my things that come to mind.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
The
Go ahead,
relationship
Jen.
is everything.
Mhm.
And that right now keeps me going, because I have a grown son who is newly married and who is texting me so that we can make plans for Christmas. He
Yeah.
is starting it. He is initiating it because I mean, and he was not a perfect student and he was not a perfect kid, and I was never a perfect mom, but that man knows that I sacrificed and that I would throw myself under a bus for him in a heartbeat. And we don't have to agree. And he doesn't have to love every decision I ever made, because the relationship that we have from the time we spent together is literally everything to me.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there too, yeah, you build that relationship over the time spent together. It's not like now we're going to work on a relationship. It naturally develops and grows with that time that you get to spend homeschooling your kids. And so, yeah, for me, I've always held on to, why do I want to do this? Like, if I'm stressed and, oh my goodness, I don't know how I can go on, it's, well, why am I doing it? What's important? And that relationship with my kids is so important, so that I'm not going to give that up unless, I hear from God otherwise, and we're going to keep going, and then prayer too. I mean, when you feel like you're at your wit's end and you don't know what to do, God, help me get through this day, or I'm exhausted, help me to get rest so that tomorrow I can come back and get at it. And then relying on your village, your, other homeschool mom friends, your spouse, grandparents, whoever, is around that can maybe help, with some of those things. Don't be afraid to outsource, whether it's school or somebody coming over to, watch the kids while you clean, or, whatever situation you have going on in your home. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing so many great ideas about how you can work and homeschool. And I think we've all said it's been so rewarding for us. So we're hoping that it will help others, in this situation, or those that may be considering it. And I really appreciate everything you brought today.
Thank you, Sunny.